brought it over. I would have got there.
But I wouldn't have, I don't know what.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. We have some guests. Julia Cochran, could I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Are you serious? I don't know if I remember it. Do I actually have to say it?
Okay, start us off.
Okay.
I pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now can you do it just by yourself?
I definitely could now.
Don't make it too hard on our audience. We don't get one very often.
All right, we have the consent agenda, the minutes from March 13th, 2019, as well as March 21st, 2019, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Any comments? Sorry, I got a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, we have two sections in the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one at the end of the meeting. Are there any interested citizens with any business before the school committee? All right, seeing none, we'll jump right into our presentations. Maddie O'Meara is here for the student rep report.
All right, so at Shaker Lane, at their March community meeting, they all read the book Do Unto Otters, which focused on the R in respect for heart, their slogan at the Shaker Lane. And Mrs. Pratt's class then performed a respect rap in front of the whole school. At the April community meeting, which is next week, they'll be making a compassion project to help the Wish Project in Chelmsford. And this Tuesday, the students completed their second Alice drill, and Ms. Kane would like to report that she is very proud of her students who did a great job with the two scenarios. RSS has nothing to report. The middle school, the NJHS completed a successful food drive last week, and the middle school also completed their spring conferences this week. And the student council planned their upcoming Spirit Week, which is next week. At the high school, the annual Polar Plunge is taking place this Saturday for the Humanitarian Club, and the COA Spaghetti Luncheon takes place next Thursday.
All right, terrific, thank you. Our next presentation is from some high school students who participated in the Facing History presentation.
All right, so do I just say next slide
Yeah.
when I want
Yes.
to? Okay. Oh, yes, that's a good idea.
I'm Sean Keefe.
I'm Catherine Houston.
And I'm Julia Cochran.
All right, so last month we went to the Lumpkin Summit in Washington, D.C., which is a conference focused on ending genocide and mass atrocities. Next slide, please. And so the first day we were there, which was the day before the conference started, we went to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which was really impactful for us because we spent probably about a semester focusing on the Holocaust. And so it was really interesting to being able to see things firsthand, especially things like shoes. And like there was a train car that we got to step in, and I think it was really important to be able to see actual objects from the Holocaust as well. And then this is us on a very windy day in front of the Supreme Court. And so getting into what we focused on during the conference, one of the big things was for this year, the focus for this year was kleptocracy. And so kleptocrats are government officials who take from their citizens. And so especially in countries where genocides are happening now, that is what the officials there are doing. So Omar al-Bashir and Joseph Kabila, who actually aren't the presidents of these nations anymore, were kleptocrats, and the people that are now in those nations ruling are basically just following in their footsteps and continuing the same patterns. And so a lot of what they're doing involves money laundering schemes. So they're running shell corporations, many of which are out of the United States, or they're going through the United States to funnel this money, and it means that they're growing richer and the people in their country are only growing poorer. And so one of the first things that we did that was actually a very cool thing for all of us to learn about was an activity on money laundering. And so what they did was they gave us a scenario of a kleptocrat, and he's running all these money laundering schemes, and he has like 10 shell corporations, and so they would give you like bank statements and emails, and you know that there are attacks against different groups of citizens, but you don't know who's organizing the attacks. And so after 20 minutes, then they gave us more information and said, figure it out. And so we kept going, and we were trying to figure out who the leader was, where these corporations were coming from, what their role was in it, are they important, who are the figures that are important. And after an hour, we were very frustrated. Nobody knew what the answer was. Nobody knew exactly where the money was coming from. And so for us, it was important to realize that like we need more people from the United States and around the world working on these issues to be able to stop kleptocrats, to put sanctions on them, because it is affecting not only our community, but really the people there too. And so this was one of the groups of Littleton students who was when we were working on this activity. And then this was another group. And then we had a third group who was also working with people from outside of Littleton. So I don't know if you want to talk at all about working with them.
Yeah, we were working with a couple people. 3 of them ran an organization out of California where they basically take kind of like tents to it's normally colleges, and they set up like each tent represents like a different Holocaust or a different genocide. So there's like the Holocaust Armenian, stuff like that. And you take the students through that, you can like tour the different genocides. And then they were all very educated, extremely helpful, and everybody there was just extremely nice and friendly.
And so then one of the people that we got to hear from, which was very important, was John Prendergast, and he's actually the founder of the Enough Project, and the Enough Project is the organization that created the Lumpkin Summit. And so he came and he talked with us a lot about where we've been and where we're going, and talking a lot about how while things aren't great and there are obviously things that need to be done, there are also things looking forward that are good, right? There are good steps that we've made, and we haven't ended mass atrocities by any means, but we're continuing to put sanctions on countries that are dangerous, and as much as we can continue to use our voices to spread awareness about genocide, then that's what matters. And then he also wrote the book Congo Stories, which focuses on people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo who are currently being persecuted and what they're going through.
And then the next person we heard from was Nima Nabadabu, and she was the first woman in the Congo to graduate college. At age 2, she was diagnosed with polio, and over time she's done a lot of great things to help women's rights in the Congo and help further the education of women. But she set up like an online, it's called like a cyber center. It's kind of like a cyber cafe where like women can go learn, educate themselves, and hopefully that'll spread and inspire more people to graduate college in the Congo. And that's just another picture of her on stage. And we had Emmy. She was a award-winning like activist and poet. Her poems were, I thought they were very moving.
Yeah.
She was just a very, very personable person too. She had a lot of personality. She was born in Darfur in Sudan. For those who don't know, there's a genocide happening to the people in Darfur by the Sudanese government. And basically she moved to the United States, and she was inspired by the story and the survivors in her home country, and she wanted to go back and give some hope to those people. So she did a 400-kilometer walk through the desert, starting outside of Darfur and walking into Darfur to help inspire the people to have a voice and have hope that the rest of the world wants to help and cares. And then not the topic of our summit this year, but a big focus last year, and then there's a few great groups about this, was conflict minerals. So a conflict mineral is a mineral mined in a conflict area, and it's illicitly sold and traded. This is extremely important because a lot of these are American companies that buy these conflict minerals, and it's in a lot of products that we use. I mean, laptops, phones, watches, anything like that. I mean, your laptop uses, and your phone would use the 4 minerals up there: tin, tantalum, tungsten, and cobalt, and gold and diamonds are the same thing. It's a lot of conflict minerals in that sense. And then next slide. This is kind of like a picture that shows you a lot of you American companies that are, if they're in the green, they're very proactive and are very open about where they get their minerals and get them from very safe sources. So like Apple, Google, and then you look at other companies like Costco or Walmart that don't get a lot of their resources from reputable places.
So at the end of our summit, we got the chance to go lobby on Capitol Hill, which was really, really cool. So they kind of prepared us, and we were presenting 3 separate bills to our representatives and senators. And so the first bill was the Sudan bill that we presented. So a little background about it is that on February 22nd, 2019, which is the day we actually left to go to the Lumpkin Summit, which was really weird, Omar al-Bashir declared a state of emergency in Sudan, and there was a lot of protests that broke out and a lot of civilians that were being shot at. And so really the point of this is to know that like things are not good in Sudan right now. Like they aren't on the road to getting better as of right now. Like the government is still kleptocratic and taking from its people, and there's still a lot of violence. So right now, the U.S. is moving towards removing sanctions on Sudan and taking them off the state sponsors of terrorism list. So the Sudan bill would prevent them from taking them off the list and kind of say, like, we're not going to take sanctions off of you until things actually take a step in the right direction. So basically, this bill would just stop condoning the Sudanese government's actions. So the second bill that we did was about beneficial ownership. So a beneficial owner is the person who profits from the company and controls all of its activity. And in the United States, you don't actually, by law, have to declare who the beneficial owner of the company is. So this means that a lot of kleptocratic governments can make shell companies, which are basically just fake companies that are just used to launder money through the U.S. banking system. So if this bill were to pass, it would make it so you have to state who the beneficial owner of your company is. So it would make it a lot harder for people to create shell companies and for people to launder money through the U.S. banking system. So then and a lot of the money that is laundered in these countries in Africa is through the U.S. banking system. So this could be something that we could do to help stop what's going on. And so then the last bill that we presented was the funds for international investigation. So in the U.S. Department of the Treasury, there is 2 people who are in charge of investigating all of the sanctions in Africa. So this is a little comical because this is like the money tracing activity that Catherine talked about. It was supposed to simulate how those people feel because you just have new information coming in all the time, and there's only 2 people. And I mean, yes, it's their job to do that, but there's still way too much information. They still get pulled, like they got pulled off to look into things in Venezuela recently. And it's really, there's not enough time, there's not enough resources for them. So this bill's ask is for $3 million to employ 6 more sanctions investigators. And $3 million sounds like a lot of money, but as far as like foreign national budget goes, it's really just a drop in the bucket. It's not that much money. And also compared to how much humanitarian aid we give in Africa every year, that's billions of dollars. So this would be something that would try to get the problem at its root instead of just giving afterwards, like after these things happen. So this is us in the House of Representatives with Lori Trahan's staff right there. And then this is us in Elizabeth Warren's office and with her staff right there. And then this last one is us in Markey, right outside of Markey's office, because there's too many of us to fit inside, so we did it in the hallway. So this is just kind of a conclusion of things that we learned. So we learned that we're all, especially us, are young constituents, and all of us are constituents, and so you should reach out to your representatives if you have something to say, because they want to hear from you, they're happy to hear from you. And also to spread awareness about these things through your community. So even if you just have a conversation about it with one of our classmates or someone that you know, or doing things like this and talking about it, doing presentations, trying to like educate other people so they know what's going on, because a lot of people really don't know what's going on. And then also just, you can always do something, no matter how small you think it might be, just you can always do something, and everything makes a difference.
Just being like proactive about what companies you're buying from can make a very big difference.
And that's all.
That's it.
Now we get to ask the school committee members if they have any questions.
Oh, okay. Any questions or comments?
Jen, anything? Sorry, so we'll go this side. Erica, how about you?
No questions. I'm just really impressed with all you learned and what you did. Great job.
Daryl?
No questions. A nice, very nice presentation, and I'm glad that we're able to have these types of activities and the support from the staff to help organize them and make them happen.
I was just going to ask, how has this changed your outlook on things, and do you see yourself maybe doing this kind of stuff in the future as a result of this trip?
I think that also just the entire facing history curriculum in class has really, I know it's changed my outlook on the type of things that like I care about and the type of things that I might want to do. Like they talked a lot about creating, like when you go to college, seeing if your campus is like conflict free. And that's like something I know I would love to like look into when I go to college next year. But like the whole class, and especially this trip, has really like opened my eyes to the things that are happening in the world that us in our own bubble in Littleton aren't always aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say, I'm headed to DC for college in the fall, and I'm attending the only university in Washington DC that's not conflict free. And so I'm planning to invest my efforts into making sure that that's a reality that's possible. I have all of these people at my fingertips, and it would be a shame to not use them to help things like this. So, yeah.
Set out,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great program. Talking about kleptocracy, money laundering, it's something in the United States that we take for granted is the amount of corruption that goes on in virtually every African country, and even Europe and Asia. It's just part of their culture. It's been that way for decades, if not hundreds of years. And it has a very negative impact on the ability of everyday people to rise above it and progress individually, and then of course that affects collectively as a country. So being aware of that, because you talked about the bubble of Littleton, but even the bubble of the United States, we don't see, because our system is by comparison wholly transparent. It isn't, but in comparison it is.
Yeah.
You know? And one thing I would offer is The Economist is a weekly magazine that does a tremendous job of covering international issues like you guys just talked about that you might not get out of the more mainstream media in the United States. So if you're interested, that's a good way to keep abreast of what's going on. And they talk about this kind of stuff every week in different parts of it. They cover the whole world every week. They give a synopsis of each continent, each area, so it's a really great thing. How many years, Mrs. Harvey, are we now up to this conference?
I think I have been teaching Facing History for 12 years, but this is my third Lumpkin Summit.
Right. Terrific. Yeah, thank you. And we plan to keep rolling down there?
If I'm allowed to.
We really appreciate you guys coming back. We really appreciate you guys coming back. You did a terrific job, and it really makes our meetings more interesting when we have a chance to hear from the students who get to do things like that. So thank you for preparing yourselves so well and doing such a great job. Now you can.
Thank you.
But you have to stay.
All right, we are now going to part one of two state of curriculum reports.
Tough act to follow after a student presentation like that. But we thank you. We're glad that we're able to come and present curriculum updates to school committee and the community. So tonight, as Chairman Fontanella just said, is part 1 of 2. So tonight we'll have 4 presentations, and then our next school committee will have another 4 to present. So tonight we have Elizabeth Rigo representing math, Elizabeth Kelly representing world language, Valerie Finnerty representing science, and Hillary Bridge representing art and music. And so we'll start with Mrs. Rigo for the math department.
Hello, so my name is Elizabeth Rigo. I'm the 6 through 12 math curriculum coordinator. So I just want to get started with some middle school accomplishments. So we have Kara Rice in the math lab. She's in her 2nd year teaching in the math lab at the middle school, and she's been doing a fantastic job. She has a 6th grade class, 7th grade class, and 8th grade class that she meets with once a day, every day. She's able to provide extra support for students to what they are learning in their math classes, and she's able to reteach concepts and have students practice math skills that may be challenging for them. She is able to develop relationships and engage students in math with hands-on lessons and activities. As for MCAS analysis and strategies, teachers are using technology in their classroom to help students prepare to take the math MCAS on a computer. DESE has released some online math practice problems that are being used, as well as practice writing math with Equation Editor and other math programs. Teachers are continuing to give students practice MCAS problems, along with exemplars to help students be prepared with the various types of problems that can be seen on the MCAS. Teachers are also continuing to review MCAS results to ensure that all of the necessary content is being taught in order for students to be successful. Khan Academy is being used for video demos, enrichment, and practicing math skills. As for professional development, the site-based PD is being used for math curriculum, implementation of new math textbooks and resources, makerspace training, and the 7th grade is working on cross-curricular projects. The teachers are continuing their PD sessions with McGraw-Hill to help with the new Common Core McGraw-Hill programs and textbooks that were implemented this school year in grades 6, 7, and 8. Teachers are offering problems of the week as extra enrichment opportunities to students. Teachers are also continuing to incorporate real-world applications to their classes, including a budgeting project and a surface area Tin Man project in the makerspace, which you can see the picture on the slide is shown above there. Teachers are using technology to practice math on the computer for MCAS, as I stated previously. And teachers are also using or plan on using the makerspace for interactive projects, Flipgrid, Google Classroom, Khan Academy, Quizlet, Kahoot, and the online textbook and resources to engage students and enhance their understanding of the math concepts. As for high school accomplishments, so for AP Statistics, 15 of the 19 students received a 3 or above on last year's exam. For AP Calculus, 25 of the 27 students received a 3 or above on last year's exam, with 12 of those students receiving a 5. For MCAS, 96% of students were proficient or advanced, with 0% receiving a warning or failing grade. As a district, 90% of students were either advanced or proficient. As a department, we are able to review the MCAS results and review the results of the individual questions. From this, we are able to see what adjustments and changes need to be made in our curriculum. We were able to use time at the full-day professional development in November to discuss the MCAS 2.0 strategies and information with the other districts, which was very helpful. And we are continuing to prepare students for MCAS testing by practicing various types of MCAS questions in class, using exemplars, and practicing problems online with our students. One of our math teachers, Julie Elmore, was chosen to grade AP Calculus tests in June for the 2nd year in a row in Kansas City. We will be implementing a new Common Core Algebra 1 textbook in both 8th and 9th grade to continue to update the course and ensure full Common Core alignment. We are starting with this implementation process this year, and we will fully implement them next year. Our AP Math enrollment has increased this year. This year, for the first time ever, we have 2 AP Calculus courses, and the number of students taking AP Statistics has also increased. Our math teachers have worked and continue to work extremely hard to implement curriculum and resources to ensure that all of the math classes are completely aligned to the Common Core standards. We have Ray Streeter, the school math tutor, back again this year. So he volunteers every Monday and Wednesday during the school day to help students who may be struggling in math or may just have a question on a particular topic. Students really enjoy working with him, and we feel so lucky to have him as a resource at our school. For professional development, the AP Statistics teacher attended the AP Statistics Summer Institute. 2 of our math teachers attended MassQ in the fall. 2 teachers attended the Parker School looking at student work. For site-based professional development, we've been looking at curriculum, instruction, and assessment on our math courses. We're creating more structured formal curriculum and updating assessments for all courses. We're also ensuring that the AP curriculum has complete content coverage with the appropriate pacing. Our college prep statistics course is offering dual enrollment this year with Middlesex Community College, so students have the opportunity in that class to take it for college credit. We're also at the high school one-to-one with Chromebooks for grades 9 through 11. Plus, we have a Chromebook cart, and students can bring their own devices. So with that, we've been using more technology. We've been using Desmos in the classroom to help explore different topics in math. With this, we're able to use graphing and exploratory activities. We're able to use polygraph activities, which is kind of like a guess who, to practice math vocabulary, and then other activities to practice and reinforce concepts. We're also using online MCAS practice. So the Department of Education released online practice questions that have been used in grades 9 and 10 to help prepare students to take the MCAS on the computer. Some teachers are also using a DocCam to make videos demonstrating problems and or calculator instructions. Google Classroom and or Google Drive is being used for notes, homework, reminders, and additional resources. Kahoot is being used for math practice and reinforcement, and the online textbook and resources are being used in courses where it is offered. And in this picture shown on the slide, this was a bridge project that the CP geometry teacher did with her students. So they had 30 Q-tips, 5 popsicle sticks, 6 pipe cleaners, and they had to create a bridge to hold as many candy pumpkins as possible in 20 minutes. So students were able to reflect afterwards which shapes made their bridge the strongest, while also developing some group problem-solving skills. So that was a fun little activity that they did. And just some recognitions and awards for the high school and the middle school. So at the high school, we do have New England Math League again this year. So it's 6 questions. It's held 6 times a year from October through March. It's held in the cafeteria. This year we had 179 students participate in at least one of these contests, which was amazing. And 34 students participated in all 6 of the contests. I took 4 students to the WPI Math Meet in October. They participated in individual and group contests, and one of our team members received a $1,000 scholarship to WPI. At this meet, students also experienced a program introducing students to WPI and introducing them to degrees and careers in the mathematical sciences. At the middle school, 10 6th graders will participate in the 6th grade math competition in Burlington in May. And a parent volunteer has been coaching them on Fridays to help them prepare for this contest. In the 7th grade, they're participating in the Scholastic Hardest Math Contest, where students can complete fun, extra challenging word problems, and they have the opportunity to win prizes such as a laptop, a tablet, or even money towards a college savings plan. 5 7th grade students were chosen after submitting their math answers for round 1 to move on to round 2. They have submitted their answers for the second round and are now waiting to hear back on that. Just some current focus areas we have for the math department. So we've been focusing on preparing our students for the MCAS 2.0. So we're continuing to do more math on the computer. We're doing this by practicing with the DESE-released MCAS tests and resources, equation editor, and other math programs such as Desmos. We're continuing to implement various types of MCAS problems and exemplars, and we're ensuring all students have access to the new MCAS reference sheet. We're also continuing to implement more technology in the classroom. We're continuing to implement real-world applications to help engage students and see how they can use math in their own lives. We're also working on implementing the new Algebra 1 textbooks and resources, which will be fully implemented next year for both grades 8 and 9. We're also going to be implementing new college prep statistic textbooks and resources for the next school year. And we're really excited about this, to be able to update our college prep statistics curriculum to be more applicable to current real-world problems. And that's about it for our math updates.
Jen, questions or comments?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Carol?
No, thank you very much for the presentation, very,
Oh, thank
very
you.
detailed.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up will be Elizabeth Kelly for World Language.
Hello again. That was really interesting for us to hear, the other teachers to hear about the other departments, so I'm very excited for math. So I'm here to talk about world languages, so that's French, Latin, and Spanish in the Littleton Public Schools. Our major accomplishments are actually on the next page. This was just a little flavor page of some things we've done. So our major accomplishments, as you know, the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy will be offered this year for seniors in 2019. Testing has been mostly completed at this time, and the results are that we have in Latin 2 students who are earning the highest level of distinction, the seal with distinction. In Spanish, we have 6 students who are earning the seal, and we actually have several more students right now who are testing. We have one student who's testing in his home language, a native speaker. I think he's starting testing tomorrow. And then we also have a couple students who requested to retest because they were right on the line of meeting the proficiency standards, so that's an option too. I do want to remind everybody that the bar is, for earning the seal is quite high, as students need to demonstrate the level of intermediate high in the language other than English, so we're really proud of those results. We will be using this data to inform our instruction as we continue to develop and refine our strategies and proficiency. We have continued to compete and earn awards in additional exams and contests, so I have some of those listed on there. The National Latin exam, the National Spanish exam, the National Mythology exam. At the middle school, we do the National Classical Etymology exam, the Junior Classical League essay contest. So those are some of the other opportunities students have to earn national awards. And then our very exciting, I think I'm still tired from it, World Language Festival last month, it's been a month now, which we hold every 2 years in order to maintain excitement and also because it's a lot of work. So we raised over $2,000 at our World Language Festival on March 7th. This funds our World Languages Book Bag Scholarship that allows us to award about $1,000 each year to a senior or several seniors, so that'll get us through the next 2 years. Guests were able to sample authentic ethnic food at 26 different cafes. They were able to enjoy musical and dance performances and interact with characters from other cultures. All students who were enrolled in a world language worked on a project that facilitated learning about another culture and its language. So topics that they covered included food, music, weather, typical leisure activities, geography or history. We had several students, there were different choices for the projects that they could do. And we had several students who created artistic posters for the Massachusetts Foreign Language Association's annual poster contest. The theme this year was Level Up Your Language Proficiency, again talking about proficiency standards through ACTFL. And we actually entered 5 for consideration in the state contest because we had so many great entries. In a similar manner, Littleton Middle School hosts a foreign language night in June of every year. And at this event, parents and students from all 3 languages come together to make food from countries that speak that language. The middle school also received an LEF grant. This was last year, but it would have been after this meeting last year, so I'm covering it. This was last May. They had a group of dancers from Flamenco Boston come and perform for the whole school through an LEF grant. We are hoping at the high school to expand our offerings of dual enrollment via Middlesex Community College next year. We are hoping to expand our offerings to Latin 3 and 4, Spanish 3 and 4, and French 3 and 4. If everything falls into place, that would allow students to earn credit for 2 college courses if they went through the sequence of levels 3 and 4 at Littleton High School. So we're pretty excited about that. So that's the next slide. Our current focus areas, I included some of the things that we've been working on with some pictures again to kind of give you a sense of what it's like. We've all been developing and implementing comprehensible input strategies with the theme of proficiency in the classroom. So we've been sharing ideas as we continue to engage in these practices. Some teachers spent days and even up to a week last summer attending various workshops like Mathless Proficiency Academy and the Core Practices Institute. Some teachers have gone to topics on organic world language instruction. Some of us went to Express Fluency workshops. All of these were in sort of that same vein of comprehensible input and proficiency practices. We've been using some of our teacher-led professional development time to model and share these practices with each other so that those of us who've gone out can share with each other what we found. We've also found that local schools are doing similar work, including Bromfield and the Parker School, and so we look forward to continuing our collaborative discussions with them in the future. I know we have another full-day professional development day next fall, so we're really excited to talk to them some more about that, as well as the Seal of Biliteracy. Some of the examples that I have up here are the deskless classroom now happening in Spanish at the high school. That's the photo on the right. And I got to observe a Spanish class today with that. That was really interesting. And the desks get moved around, so there are desks available for different activities. And then on the left, this is an 8th grade class that does circles of instruction, which is one of the strategies as part of that OWL, that organic world language that I was mentioning. So we are all at the bottom one is a Latin class at the middle school where Tori Hicks has, through grants and other funding, she talks about flexible arrangements of seating, and kids can kind of have different options for how they want to sit. There are desks as well. We are all developing new assessments to reflect these curriculum changes and focus on proficiency, and some of those things are integrated performance assessments, which is when you have an assessment that is a real-life assessment that includes all the different modes, but is sort of on one topic. So I'll talk about that more about that later. The other new assignments that we are very proud of are actually our I'll say our blizzard bag, our snow day assignments, where we got together and through reading novellas or short stories, so teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, that students then kind of come up with a project. So they're doing reading for proficiency, and then they create a visual image to represent reactions to the text. We all kind of fell in love with this assignment as it was applicable to any language, any level of language study by just adjusting what the students were reading. So we were very excited about that. And we also allowed for a lot of student choice in the text for students to read. So even though we haven't had many snow days this year, we have our resources now that we can probably use at the end of the year. But that's what's nice about these novellas and short stories. They can be used anytime. They are not bound to one spot in the curriculum. The rest of our time has been spent mentoring our new teachers, and because of the changes in staffing, refining, I'll say, our curricula's vertical alignment, making sure that we're 6 through 12 all in alignment. And lastly, I have one more slide with additional alternative learning opportunities. As you can hopefully see from the pictures that we've put together. Our classrooms are very busy places, and we even encourage learning in foreign language outside of the classroom. So the lower right picture is actually at the State House in Boston in a field trip that I lead every year, which is called Latin on the Freedom Trail, where we walk the Freedom Trail and we look at all the Latin, and all those students are looking up at Latin on the ceiling in the State House. But in place of mid-year exams, finals, and even traditional unit tests, we have teachers engaging students in projects. And so I've listed some of those here. Again, those integrated performance assessments are being used quite a bit in French right now. We also have, in French 3 and 4, we had the Spanish 3 honors class again wrote books as a mid-year project and then read their books to first graders at Shaker Lane. I know you had a presentation on that in the past, and that's the picture on the upper right. We had Spanish 2 honors create short films as their mid-year projects, and there were mystery, suspense, and reality TV themes. Trailers were created for short stories. We had compositions and free writes on the mid-year exam in Latin. Last year, we had some of my Latin 3 students host a Roman wedding as a portion of their final exam. So lots going on. We also took a trip this year to Boston University for Classics Day in December. That's something that students have been asking to go to every year. And I'm taking students next week, actually, to Europe on a trip to travel the ancient Roman road, the Via Aurelia, and we'll be in Barcelona across the Pyrenees to Nice, Monaco, Pisa, Florence, and then finally Rome. Next year, Margot Gillen is hoping to host a Spanish exchange again with the same, I guess we'll say, sister city of Burgos, Spain, where the students would come over in the fall, and then some of our students would go there in February of 2020. So, like I said, a lot going on. We have pretty active teachers, active students, so thank you for having us share this with you. So are there any questions tonight?
I just wonder if you could tell me a little bit more about the deskless classroom and what your goals are there.
So because in world language the goal is communication, there is the idea that having a desk can impede communication because it's a barrier between people. So the circles of learning and the deskless classroom are just different ways of students to get up and move and talk in more authentic real life situations. So the class I saw today, the deskless classroom, we didn't know what to call it. That's what we came up with, or new jargon. Students were sitting in a circle. So the chairs were arranged in a circle. So the kids come in every day and grab a chair, sit down. They were in a circle because right now they're reading a novel. And then they were each reading around, and that was about half the class or a little less. The teacher was asking them questions, but there was nothing between the teacher and the students because of that, because they were sitting kind of in a circle. We don't have, like in lower grades, we don't have rugs on the floor and pillows, and, so it's that kind of idea. And then the second part of the class, the desks actually came back into play, and there was an inner and outer circle kind of, I will say game, but it was a review of the content that they had read in class. And there were desks there just to make a differentiation between the inner group and the outer group.
Great.
So just flexible, really flexible classroom is what it is.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Gracias.
De nada. Okay. So I think up next, I teach Latin, remember?
It's a derivative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so Valerie Finnerty, I believe, is next, who is going to talk to us about the science department.
I can see it. What do you need?
Back to there was just a
Switch the
picture
on
missing.
you? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I chose some pictures for the first slide to show our emphasis on the importance of hands-on science from grade 6 to 12. One picture shows a student using Legos to model how atoms are rearranged during chemical reactions. These Lego kits are actually used in 8th and 9th grades to model photosynthesis also. There are high school physics students dropping a pumpkin to calculate energy and forces. The video is missing, actually, is what it is, and it's making a cloud in a bottle. It was very cool. Dissecting a brain, and then students conducting their own experiments and engineering projects.
Oh, they did transfer over.
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, wait. Okay. There it is.
Here it is. Try it again.
Okay, we can move on to the boring stuff, okay. So at the middle school, last year was the first year that the 8th grade Science, Technology, and Engineering MCAS was computer-based, and we did really well. We were in the top 5% of the state for our results with a CPI of 87.4. And 11% of our students scored advanced, which was the highest in the last 4 years. We have fully aligned the newest state standards for science, technology, and engineering at the middle school. So this year's 8th graders are the first group that has had all of the new standards from 6th through 8th grade. And this year's MCAS will feature all of the new standards from 6th to 8th grade. I think we did a really good job of integrating it in. We staggered the introduction of the new standards over about 4 or 5 years in order to get everybody caught up. Because it is pretty difficult to teach something that you've never taught before. We had to gather materials and change some of our curriculum to meet the new standards. Also, at the 2018 Massachusetts State Science and Engineering Fair, we had 5 student projects that received awards, and we had 2 LMS 8th graders who were National Science Fair semifinalists in the 2018 Broadcom Masters competition. And then going on to curriculum, so the 8th grade science curriculum was revised to incorporate the Marzano standards-based proficiency scales and assessments. And in 6th grade, thanks to an LEF grant, 6th grade scientists will be monitoring local water and will be participating in the Worldwide Earth Echo Water Challenge. So that'll be this spring. 8th grade students participated in a pilot of a Concord Consortium online learning game called Geneventure, which was a game where they bred dragons to learn about reproduction, genetics, and protein synthesis. It was set up so that students could learn at their own pace, and students who were advanced could go on to more advanced topics, and students who were struggling were given review in order to progress. So it was very interesting to do that. 7th grade students have been using News ELA, which is an online website that has science news and discoveries that have been written for a middle school level. And so that has been done to incorporate current events and make connections with their daily lives. And with the Science and Engineering Fair in 7th grade this year, she introduced an SEL component to help students to take time to reflect on their competencies and to progress in self-awareness, self-management, and relationship skills. I do this every year, but I'm always nervous, so sorry about that. Also at LMS, I didn't put this on the slide, but I remembered it today. Our science teachers in their site-based PD have been continuing to focus on aligning a claim evidence reasoning writing format to help students to improve their ability to answer open response questions. So we're aligning that 6 to 8. We have developed a common rubric and common prompts for that. And then at the high school, 97% of the high school students who took the 2018 biology MCAS scored proficient or advanced, and 98% passed. I have to say that over the last few years, we've had a 9th grade CP Earth Science or integrated science class for students who would benefit from an extra year before taking the biology and before taking the biology MCAS. And so I think that's really paid off in ensuring that these students can then go on to biology and pass the MCAS in 10th grade. There was a new lab-based biotechnology course that was developed and implemented last year, and it was offered this year. And students are learning biotechnology techniques and have even learned CRISPR, which is a type of gene editing. And they're visiting Novartis Pharmaceutical this spring on a field trip. A new independent technology-rich physics lab has been set up, and it's been allowing students to perform more sophisticated experiments and to learn concepts through hands-on experiences. They are offering dual enrollment Physics 1 again, and they can get credit from MCC. The climate change unit of the CP Environmental Science was updated to incorporate current events, technological advancements, and current science that's been going on. And Earth Science is also, as a result of a professional development, they're integrating HoloGlobe real-time data Earth process modeling software to allow students to monitor current science readings and data that's available at the time. And then as a result of the Marzano and SEL initiatives, there's been new cooperative learning opportunities and academic games added to the CP chemistry curriculum. And the Earth Science curriculum has offered more kinesthetic learning experiences. Those are our students who are needing that extra year before they take biology. And then the last section is some more pictures that I chose. So I'm showing some experiments being done in class. Modeling DNA using Connects. So modeling is a very important part of the new standards. Examining flower parts to look at reproduction, reproductive parts. Cell models in 6th grade. We had a guest speaker in 8th grade from the American Meteorological Society. This is Mikey, who was one of our National Science Fair semifinalists, and he studied the effect of climate change on pollen and analyzed the amino acid and protein concentration. And those are some physics students exploring the center of gravity. And then there's a video, which I probably will not make it at the end there. Maybe. So this is in physics also, where students created a magnetic field around a bolt. So it's suspended. I don't know if you can get it going. It's suspended, and as soon as they remove the magnetic field, the bolt will drop into the bottle. So I don't know if it will work. It worked on my computer. Maybe it can be shared with you individually.
It worked when I sent them, because I
Yeah.
double checked it.
Yeah, strange, it's not working. Sorry, well,
Well, maybe you all can look at it individually. So,
yeah.
do you have any questions for me?
Well, your phrase kinesthetic learning was perfect, by the way. That's
Pardon
something
me?
that kinesthetic learning.
Video,
Sound. Not the whole thing.
not the
Sorry.
video part. That's okay.
Jen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So next we have Hillary Bridge with art and music.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Once we get that up, we'll begin with high school art. So we have had some good technological upgrades this year at the high school that are helping to aid in the creativity of our art students, like the purchase of some more DSLR cameras to help expand the digital photography program, and some further use with the Adobe Suite that we got last year that we've started to incorporate some more. So students have access to the latest applications in design technology like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, Animate, Lightroom, all of those contained within the Adobe Suite. This year, the AP Art History course is running. There are 15 students enrolled, which enrollment is up from the last time the class was offered. Among their many highlights, they did take a field trip to the MFA to work on their art analysis and interpretation skills. There is also some high school artwork on display at the Rubenhor Library as part of their rotating exhibits. Ms. Hosfeld, Emily Hosfeld at the high school, was able to attend the National Art Educators Conference this year, which was held in Boston for the first time in 14 years. That allowed her some really great professional development opportunities. And the Visual Arts Department at LHS was just awarded an LEF grant for printmaking, so that will bring some exciting new opportunities for next year. We're looking forward to the Spring Art Show on May 7th, so if you want to come on over there on May 7th at 6 o'clock, you can check out the student artwork just prior to the spring concert. In the middle school art room, we have 8th grader Catherine McDonough, who received a Silver Key from the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for her work in painting. The Mural Club is very active at the school, painting some bathroom stall doors with uplifting messages for the students, and this was done through a grant with the PTA. With additional money from a grant from LEF, Nicole Winters has piloted the Traveling Tokens project, which is where small clay discs the students create, and they get passed from one friend to another to help students connect with each other and think about the behaviors and virtues that they value in life. Nicole also served as an arts integration specialist with MIT's Edgerton Center on a Master Makers panel, so that helped her lead some more professional development with the LMS Makerspace, better known as the C-Lab. To see some student artwork or to learn more about Miss Winters' classroom, you can follow her on Twitter, and I have her Twitter handle there, and on Instagram for some more photos there. And the elementary art room, sorry, that slide is so tiny. Students at Shaker Lane and at Russell Street have had a wonderful year in the art room. Andrew Romano and Casey Taylor are continuing to work together to integrate learning from grades K through 5. All of our artists explore using a variety of media, not limited to painting, drawing, sculpture, clay, and collage. A new kiln was installed this year at Russell Street, so that has also helped to expand the 3 through 5 art curriculum there. Andrea Romano has been continuing to work with Heidi McGregor in the think tank with the 4th grade art curriculum. And some other highlights include a 4th grade field trip to the DeCordova Sculpture Park in Lincoln, and then a 5th grade field trip into Boston to the Institute of Contemporary Art. And they participated in a gallery tour and studio experience there. Russell Street will have their art show on May 2nd at 6 p.m. This is the second year that the Square One Art fundraiser at Shaker Lane has been offered, and the money that was earned last year has allowed the purchase of some new shelving and furniture and organizational units to help improve the art space at Shaker Lane. Shaker Lane classes also participated in an event where they made over 100 Valentine's Day cards for veterans and delivered them to the VA hospital in Bedford. Also, Ms. Taylor has obtained an LEF grant to have R.W. Alley, the author and the illustrator of Paddington Bear, will be coming to Shaker Lane on April 29th to help make the students make real-life connections for literacy and art with the students. So now we're on to music. The Littleton Music School program, and I guess in conjunction also the high school, has undergone some changes because we've shifted the model a little to 2 shared teachers, to 1 teacher at Littleton Middle School and 1 teacher at Littleton High School. So we welcome Ashley Sheldon to our department, and she's teaching band, chorus, and general music at Littleton Middle School. The middle school band and chorus has had 2 of their 3 annual performances this year, the winter concert, and then we've just had the 6th annual townwide concert back in February, and they have a final performance coming up in June. The fall musical at the middle school was the largest production to date, having more than 60 students, and we have an additional Who Pushed Humpty Dumpty is coming up, their play, on the weekend of May 17th. In addition to now having 1 teacher teaching all of the music at middle school, Ms. Sheldon has also begun a middle school jazz band, so that's nice to have that offering at a younger level for them. And so on to the high school band. This year we earned $550 at our Sweets and Sweets fundraiser in November, and that was right after we had a great football season, playing for all of our home football games. Then we also played at the town tree lighting, as well as the holiday bazaar and our winter concert in December. We also had the town-wide concert participating with more than 310 students. That was back in February, as I mentioned before. The band program had its largest fundraiser, the mattress sale, just this past weekend. We sold 31 beds, and there's $3,000 coming to the Littleton Public Schools band program. Yeah, so that's wonderful, especially for a one-day fundraiser. And I'm always wary at the start that I'm thinking, boy, there's no way we're going to be able to sell this many beds, and then we always do. So it is a surprising one that works well. Following next week, we will be performing at the Council on Aging Luncheon. The chorus and the jazz band will be performing there, and after that, we'll be looking forward to our March in the Memorial Day Parade and our concert on May 7th. The high school band also just recently returned from Disney World. We traveled to Orlando, Florida over our February vacation. Students had a wonderful time at our workshop. We did have a handful of students who went on the 2016 trip as well as this trip, and they cited the presenter that we were given for our workshop as even more engaging and wonderful than our previous one. During the workshop, we got to score music to scenes from Frozen. Unfortunately, Disney really has some pretty strict copyright infringement laws. I wish I could show it to you, but I can't. I can show it, I can't send it to you.
Can you hum a few bars?
Huh?
Can you hum a few bars?
Do you want to build a snowman? That's what we played that one. We played that one. If you are interested in viewing, I'm happy to just show it to you sometime, but there's lots of things that I have to sign that say I won't send it to anybody, so. So we also had a great performance while we were there. We played on the Disney Springs waterfront stage. We played to a full house, which was pretty surprising for 11 o'clock on a Monday morning. Although I still travel to Russell Street for the 5th grade band, I'm being much more primarily at the high school this year has allowed us to offer 2 new electives. So we had a History of Rock class that ran in the fall semester, and then we've also had music theory. We've had 2 sections run, one in the fall and one in the spring. History of Rock had 15 students enrolled this fall, and we learned about the history of American culture and social justice through music of the 1950s to present day. And their final project included some collaboration with Sue Hines, the library media specialist at the high school, and the students produced their own podcasts. Taking over the chorus program this year has yielded some pretty good results, although enrollment is small. I have 9 very enthusiastic girls, and we are looking forward to some future expansion. Come on down to our concert to see what we've been up to. And in addition to the band and chorus, we are also having the beginning guitar class, and they will be performing at our May 7th concert as well, with the largest enrollment we've had, 17 students. You can follow all of our happenings in the instrumental program if you follow me on Twitter at Mrs. Bridge LPS. And our elementary music classes, we have kindergarten and 1st grade are participating in some folk songs and singing games from around the world, and introducing and reinforcing musical skills like steady beat, tonality, simple meter, and form, having students really just coming in at an entry point to the arts. 1st and 2nd grade have much more exposure to music notation and starting to build a common music literacy among the students. 2nd grade students also learn some folk dances that tie into American history culture, and they use a standard repertoire of formations and calls. The 3rd grade has learned about some more complex concepts. They get a little deeper into music notation. They learn things such as ostinato and composition and theme and variation. They've also had some exciting times this year pairing with Heidi McGregor as well, again in the think tank and using Scratch to create their own electronic instruments. I saw some videos of that and it looked so cool. I kind of wanted to play with one myself. The 4th graders have been playing recorder, so they are further deepening their understanding of musical concepts and starting to view music through the lens of a performer. It helps to build and reinforce their skills in music literacy. And 5th graders have also had an introduction to piano and a keyboard unit where they started to transfer their literacy skills that they learned in 4th grade on recorders to a different instrument. They also have had the opportunity to perform some bucket percussion with a donation from Littleton Lumber, some buckets, so the kids have a percussion unit and learning about found music. 5th graders also discuss music as social scientists and philosophers and talking about what music is and what it isn't and what makes it good and why do we make music, and some other ways about how cultures treat music, which may or may not be the same as we do. And that's about what we've got for you. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Questions?
No, just as someone who is not musically or artistically inclined, I think it's great that you're doing all this and that the kids are exposed to so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. Hillary, you have quite a large portfolio. You look at our other curriculum coordinators. And for comment for all of the curriculum coordinators here this evening, they do yeoman's work. We pay them a stipend. They teach full-time, and they help lead our schools in the various subject disciplines. And they do an incredible job. And it takes a lot of time. This just doesn't take a few hours a month. It takes constant communication and collaboration. They've also been wonderful in our transition this year with our director of curriculum. We haven't skipped a beat musically. term. That's the extent of my talent. So I really want to.
Steady beat is a kindergarten benchmark.
Just want to really sincerely thank all of you for everything that you do. I mean, greatly appreciated, and as a superintendent, I'm very proud of everything that we do in our district, and we're always looking for ways to do things better, to expose our students to new things, and it's the staff, our curriculum coordinators, and administration working together to make this happen. So these presentations are a very proud moment for me as a superintendent, and I'm sure my administrative team shares the same feeling. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thanks.
I'm really proud of you.
Proud mama.
All right, next we have a presentation on vocal surveys.
Right.
Vocal being an acronym.
When did you want to be out of here this evening?
I have a hard stop at 9:50.
At 9? Anybody else earlier? We're good? Okay. I'll start off with saying a few words or sentences, and then I'm going to turn over to Beth and the principals. The vocal survey stands for Reviews on Climate and Learning. It's administered during the MCAS exams, and they've upped the expectations. And the grade 5 survey consists of 36 questions. The grade 8 and 10 survey has 38 questions, so it's pretty comprehensive. What is important to note is it takes a look at various aspects of climate. It also creates a crosswalk with our CASEL social emotional learning model and the 5 competencies within that model. The survey doesn't measure SEL skill acquisition. What it measures is the climate necessary for students to increase their SEL competencies. That's probably one of the better measurements that you can find. If you have an instrument that truly measures the climate that is essential for students to begin to master the SEL competencies, you're pretty well assured that students will move forward with those competencies. And also staff having an opportunity to reflect on their teaching methodologies and their classroom management plan. It allows teachers to reflect on the language that they use, the problem-solving skills that they use with students. And these surveys, from my analysis, and obviously the state did a great job of providing a detailed analysis of what the results meant, really truly does give us a good measure of the climate within those grade levels in our schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth, and Beth will give a short introduction, and then we'll have each principal of the Russell Street Middle School and High School talk about their results.
A little bit from Shaker Lane.
Okay, you have a little bit tonight? All right.
You asked me, boss.
Great.
I got it ready for you.
So to give some overview to build off of what Superintendent Clenchy said, is that vocal or views of climate and learning is a student survey that is attached right to the MCAS exam. So the students take the MCAS exam, and then they have this survey at the very end. And it is completely optional for the students to take. So this is designed to provide schools with information on students' perceptions of 3 different dimensions. So that would include engagement, which really talks about the value of diversity and differences within the school, social connection and respect, as well as the levels of engagement intellectually, emotionally, and behaviorally within the classroom. The second dimension is safety, which is creating that bond to the school, and whether students feel physically and emotionally safe, and this is really a lot of where the bullying questions are tucked into. And the third dimension is environment. And that's the instructional environment, talking about whether it is collaborative, relevant, challenging, and supportive, and whether there are systems of support that exist within our schools. And so this survey is actually based on the conceptual framework of the U.S. Department of Education's school climate surveys. And the vocal survey, satisfies the survey that we have to give every 4 years per the state law of an act relative to bullying in schools. So specifically with regards to the survey design, is that students in grades 5, 8, and 10 were given the option to take this as part of, at the end of the MCAS exam. So again, it was completely optional for students, for schools, and for districts to partake in this. DESE administered 76 items across the 3 grades with common items across the surveys to allow for data linking in the future. And all of the items use the same response options for the students. So the options were always true, mostly untrue, and never true. And statewide, 79% of eligible students participated in the survey. And when we look at the results of the survey and we look at the index scores, they're based on a scale of 1 to 99, and those are the point values. And so anything that has a difference of about 3 to 4 points is significant. And I say that because we're going to see that a couple of times. And so I want us to make sure that we just realize that 3 to 4 points is a significant difference when we're talking about these numbers. Dr. Clenchey also mentioned the crosswalk. I think this is a really great dynamic part of this survey. So what DESE did, the state did, is they connected the questions that they asked on this survey to social emotional learning, accessible instruction, and positive behavior supports frameworks. And so we all know that a positive environment improves academic, social, and emotional outcomes for all of our students. And so what DESE did was they highlighted the connection between the vocal survey with CASEL's 5 SEL competencies, as Dr. Clenchey mentioned. And so this connection allows us to ensure that we're creating that environment for students to learn and to practice and enhance their own SEL skills. So again, to repeat, this isn't to assess our students' SEL skills. It's to make sure that we're providing the proper environment to, for students to work on those skills. So specifically jumping into district data on this survey, we had last year in 2018, 319 students complete the survey in grades 5, 8, and 10. That was 91% participation for our district across those 3 grades. And so when we broke it down into the different sections, our overall climate score was a 52, and against the state it was a 50. The engagement, our score was even with the state at 50. For safety, Littleton, our score was a 54, and the state at 50. So again, that's 4 points, meaning a significant difference with regards to safety. So we're proud of that. For the environment, we were even with the state at 50, and then our bullying index score was a 54 in comparison to the state, which was a 50. Again, a 4-point difference, which is a significant difference. So you can see it looking at these general categories on the survey is that all of our scores at the district, as a district, were at state level or above. And so based on these scores and this information, all of our schools fall into the schools with typical school climates, with the high school and middle school being 1 point away from joining the schools with relatively strong school climates. And those schools are actually the top 15% of schools in the state. So that's another thing that we're really proud of that this survey was able to capture. So with that being said, each principal has a little update to give. Again, the survey was given in 5th, 8th, and 10th. So we have Russell Street, middle school, and high school. But our Shaker Lane, Mrs. Kane does have some relevant information for this topic, and so she's going to update us as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Steele. I'd like to think it all begins with our littles and what we do there. Dr. Clenchey had asked me a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, to put together just what we're doing to support social emotional learning at Shaker Lane, although we weren't evaluating with this survey. So some of our highlights. This year, actually I'm going to go back quite a few years. Second Step has been at the Shaker Lane School for years. I think when many of the programs came out years ago when we had some school incidents. The Shaker Lane started with different programming. Through the years, the Second Step program has different types of bullying, empathy programs, and we focus on the empathy program. Each teacher teaches a lesson, and the lesson components fall under the headings of skills for learning, empathy, emotional management, and problem solving. It's not every week that they teach a lesson because there aren't as many lessons as we have to cover the school year, but they teach a lesson. There's some interactive modeling. There's role playing for the kids, and we refer to that Second Step program as our core program for social emotional learning. This year, Dr. Clenchey had purchased social emotional learning in the classroom books for us, and what we did was we took the 5 CASEL competencies: self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, and social awareness. And we laid out all of those areas during one of our staff meetings. And what we did was we talked as the staff and said, okay, what does it look like? What does relationship skills look like in our classrooms? And we put together different Post-it notes from the grade levels to say, okay, it looks like this in preschool, it looks like this in kindergarten, transitional, first and second, which gave us a really good connection to the CASEL competencies. And I think that that book laid it out for us, and then we took it a little step further. Each month, we have a community meeting where we focus on heart. This coming month, we are doing a compassion project. We try to do 2 to 3 compassion projects a year. Earlier this year, we did a compassion project for the House of Hope in Lowell, where we collected hats and mittens, just to teach the kids that they can be responsible citizens, giving back to their community. The next one will be something special for May. We focus on heart during that time. And then most recently this year, which we're very proud of, our school psychologist, Laura Braun, and school counselor, Justine Matherin, put together a 6-week kind of like intensive social thinking curriculum. And they created lessons and went into each classroom over 6 weeks and taught the following topics: whole body listening, which is having your eyes listening, ears watching, body still, brain in the game. Voice levels, how a voice level 1 is appropriate, 2, 3 is if you're getting hurt, 4 and 5. Personal space, we call it like a space bubble. Being part of the group, so when the group is talking, you're looking at them, you're with them, you're not off in your own little area. We use the terms expected and unexpected behavior. We would expect that when someone's talking, you're looking at them. Unexpected would be looking in another direction. And zones of regulation, we've really focused on that this year to have students kind of match their body with a color. And these, what the teachers did and our school psychologists, they put together not only a presentation, but a game and an activity for the kids. And it is exciting to look at these numbers, because I asked Ms. Matherin, can you put together the number of kids that you've worked together, that you've worked with over the past 3 years, just to see if any of what we're doing is having an impact on students. And she shared these numbers with me. In 2016-17, as the single guidance counselor with, I'm not sure what the numbers were in 16-17, she serviced 115 students, 1 guidance counselor. Last year, in 2017-18, we had about 440 students. Might have been a little bit higher than that. She serviced 107 students. This year we have 440 students, and she is currently servicing 69 students. And I think that's a credit to the programming that we've brought in and that we look at and continuously try and support our kids' social emotional learning. And I just want to celebrate the staff and the students for all their hard work with that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. As we take a look at the Russell Street School results, I want to move down, Steve, past Littleton to Russell. Do you have Russell Street? Yep, there you go. As you take a look at our overall scores, as Beth mentioned, there's 3 categories. We're within 3 points of the state on either side. On each category, our safety category was our strongest, a couple points above the state, and environment and engagement are a few points below the state, bring our overall school climate a couple points below the state, but within the expected norm. So overall, we're very pleased with the results. We had a pilot of this survey in 5th grade in 2017, and this was the first more formal opportunity for students to take it. This year, 4th graders and 5th graders will take it, which I think is nice. It's a little bit difficult in a town like Littleton because we don't have multiple elementary schools, so we don't have an internal comparison. So we're comparing ourselves against the state with a single cohort of students that will change each time they're in 5th grade. So it's nice to get an opportunity to look at 4th grade at the end of this year and then try to make some changes for 5th grade. The way it's designed right now, the next time these 5th graders will be assessed is in 8th grade, right, Cheryl? Yeah. A few things to keep in mind as we take a look at the state. A couple things. We talk about with MCAS, our cohort numbers are smaller because of the size of our district. So we had 118 students in the aggregate in Littleton take this assessment. So each student is just under a percentage point. I'll talk about that a little more specifically when we get to subgroups. But as we look at the first category of engagement, generally we're within the 2 or 3 points of the state in most of our questions. So I took a look at questions that are have more than a 4-point discrepancy, either above or below the state. And when we look at the places that we're above, we talk about school activities. That's question number 7. Students get the chance to take part in school activities. We're significantly above the state. All adults working at the school treat all students respectfully, significantly above the state, and students respect one another. So those are pretty nice things to see related, that we feel like our climate is respectful with teachers and students, and that students feel engaged with the activities that we're providing. We had a few areas that were areas to take a look at, questions 5, 8, and 12. Interestingly, one of them is when I'm stuck, my teachers want me to try again before they help me. And so we talked a little bit about that at staff meeting. We've been working so hard at social emotional learning and making sure that we look at students' anxiety levels and are supportive. We talked about the importance of maintaining that rigor and encouraging students to continue to try on their own before we jump in and help them. So that was an interesting question to see us significantly below the state. I was surprised to see that. When we take a look at question 8 and question 12, they're similar. My teachers asked me to share what I've learned in a lesson, and my teachers use my ideas to help classmates learn. Those are questions that we'll continue to take a look at. I feel like we do a pretty good job with that, but it's interesting that we fall below the state. So those things are happening, maybe not in a way that students are seeing as clearly, so it gives us an opportunity to take a peek and see what kind of changes we can make there. As we move on to safety, this I mentioned was our strongest category at Russell Street. I was very pleased, question 14, we were 97% of students, and if you look at that bar, that dark blue for question 14 is strongly agree. So that's a resounding support of students that they feel safe at school, and I thought that was great. We've worked a lot on that in the last few years in the district, and I was pleased to see that. Teachers support and help students who come to class upset. Again, we've really focused on social emotional learning. The Russell Street team is very in tune with that. We were pleased to see that. Staying above the bold line, a couple areas that we'll take a look at are teachers, students, and principals work together in our school to prevent and stop bullying, and students try to stop bullying when they see it happening. That's interesting. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell what kids are thinking there. We don't necessarily encourage students to insert themselves in a situation, but rather to gain help from adults and that kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to see what we hear as we move forward. If you look down below that bold line, those are the questions that give us our bullying sub-index. And in contrast to that, you'll notice question 22, overwhelmingly we do well with groups of students. In my school, groups of students tease or pick on one student. We're well above the state. And in question 25, in my school, older students scare or pick on younger students, well above the state. So there's a little bit of discrepant information there. We'll continue to take a look at it. The kids who took the question are the oldest kids in the school, so I'm not sure how that all relates, but it's certainly something to take a look at. As we move into environment, we mirror the state very closely, except in 4 questions. 2 of them, question 28 and question 36, have to do with school rules. One of them feeling like they're fair for all students, and one talking about having a voice. Those are a little interesting. All of our students have a voice in classroom rules. We follow the responsive classroom approach, and students develop rules in their classroom. They may be thinking of sort of recess rules and those kinds of things, so that's good information for us to have. School rules are fair for all students. I feel that one's interesting to me. I think As we, over the past several years, have moved more to a restorative practice, there are some students and parents who feel like rules aren't fair because they're not exactly the same, and they don't necessarily see an in-school suspension, or they don't see a visible outcome of that. So I think my question is, do students not think they're fair and not think they're always the same? Because we work with every student individually. So we'll keep taking a look at that as well. Jump into subgroups. I'm not going to go in depth in subgroups, but a couple points that I want to make. You'll notice in our economically disadvantaged subgroup, lots of orange, which indicates that on that question, that subgroup was at least 7 points less than the aggregate at our school. And I just want to point out that in both our economically disadvantaged subgroup and our students with disabilities subgroup.
Scott, we don't have that data in the presentation.
Oh, it's not in there?
Because the groups were so small.
That's what I was going to say. I would use that with
But you can still talk about it.
Lots of caution. No, just there's 10 students in the subgroup for economically disadvantaged students, so every student's 10 percentage points. So, if you could be 7 percentage points off the aggregate because one student said not true. So I think we have to take that with a grain of salt. Certainly want to continue it, but continue to look at it. But it's very difficult, I think, with that, thousands of students at the state level and only 10 students in the district. It's tough to really pull a correlation there. I will mention out of subgroups, though, one of the things that's interesting is in every question that we're below the state, our girls are above the state. And so there's definitely a theme from boys about rules and voice and playground aggression and those types of things. So that's a nice gender thing for us to be able to take a look at, and how can we build some connections with boys. As we think about next steps, we have done some significant training at Russell Street School and in the district with Charity Bell around adverse childhood experiences, trauma-informed instruction. We actually have 2 teachers that wrote a grant to bring Charity Bell back next year to speak to students. We'll continue our SEL efforts. That's been ongoing this year. Staff and student conversations about the survey. And as I mentioned, next year, 4th graders and 5th graders will take the survey, which will let us sort of track how well some of the interventions we try are working. The only other thing I would mention is, and we mentioned this in MCAS, but I think it's even a more important point in this kind of survey, that cohort to cohort, each group of 120 students has their own sort of group personality. So it'll be interesting to see a little bit of the ups and downs, and you can predict that a little bit for those of us that work with students closely. But overall, for our first run, we felt pleased. We certainly would like to be stronger. This has been a major effort for us in all of the time that I've been here, and certainly a major district effort over the last couple of years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just a comment. When you look at any assessment, we have a tendency to look at numbers as being finite. But you always have to remember that assessments have something called standard deviation. This particular instrument has a standard deviation of approximately plus or minus 7. So, and that's not abnormal for an instrument like this. But again, we all have a tendency to say, well, the number is the number. Well, that's very seldom true when you apply statistics to it. There's always a range.
I'm thinking in my head how we want to phrase this, but before we as a school committee dive in, I just want to kind of get the pulse amongst ourselves what we want to do. There's a tremendous amount of information and data in here, and this is brand new, right? This is the first time that we've looked at that, and I'm feeling like I want to hear from the principals, but before we dive in, I want to go back and look at this data and assimilate the comments that are being made and the way it's being presented with the actual data, which we haven't had, at least I haven't had a chance to do. So I just offer you, like, maybe we can, ask some questions, but I might want to say, let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting to have a more robust discussion when we've all had time to think about this, and we get that back to conceivably. Thoughts about that?
Fine either way.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, like, when you were just talking about the difference between boys and girls, or I don't think that data was in here,
Right, well,
so
yeah.
I don't know if we want to, like, be able to review
And that's just my thought, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to bow to consensus.
Yeah, no, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
That data point mentioned by Scott was him teasing out the data. We don't have tables, that's part of our analysis internally, but we can certainly talk
But I'm just
more
saying,
about
like, there's
that.
nothing here that shows us anything that even we could tease out or
Right,
take.
but there won't be, because it's not part of the analysis. It was an additional analysis done by Scott when he did the analysis. We don't have any summary tables on that. That was just a deep dive by the principal.
Okay.
Because you get the student level responses.
Yeah,
Okay,
again, we're just trying to put, it's the first time we've looked at data, so we're trying to put our best, take our best look at it.
Right.
Again, with one grade of one group of kids and try to use it in a meaningful way. It's certainly a meaningful survey, and it's something that's important to us. So, we're always looking at, are there particular groups of students that we can be working with differently? And so, this year we've taken a look at recess, for example, and, we've had some challenges in certain grades in recess. And so we're, taking a look at how we can improve that. So we're sort of extrapolating from questions to think about what we're also seeing in the field.
And okay, and that's because you're looking at actual student responses as opposed, okay, sorry, I'm
That's okay.
somehow missed that.
Oh, there's so
part.
much data.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
hard
yeah.
to
I don't want
to
that.
tease through.
All right, I'm not trying to put a chill on questions or comments, other than I would like an opportunity to really get after it, which I don't feel prepared personally to do tonight. But if anybody else has any comments or questions for Scott, please feel free to
And-
chime in.
Well, while we're still kind of discussing this, and it's not specific
okay.
to you, is there anything then we should be focusing or understanding about this now that we're going to go and take more time to look at it? I'm just wondering if there's...
Well, I think, there's nothing that really stands out. I guess another look at this and spending some time digesting it will give you an opportunity to see the different dimensions of climate. And, looking at the questions and seeing where our students' response rates are. So it just gives you probably a better understanding. We did put a lot in the package, but we wanted to give you a complete picture if you wanted to dive that deep. And I agree with Mike. This isn't a topic that's going to be a one-time topic. We're going to have a presentation first meeting in May, focusing on middle school and high school in terms of some of the things we've been working on, and specific to academic stress and student perceptions of bullying, et cetera. So it's going to be a topic revisited. We can revisit it next meeting. I want to caution you, the next 3 meetings are going to be action-packed. This is the time of year. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that we have a meeting that's a reasonable length, so that it's not 11 o'clock at night and we're still throwing numbers at you and wanting to engage in conversation. So we can make it happen, but it's going to be busy from now to the end of June. I mean, all our school committee meetings are busy. These are a little more action-packed.
Good. Are we good with Scott?
Sure.
I was waiting for you, Darryl. I thought you had one drawn
So
up.
knowing that it's going to be full, are we still?
No, I'm going to make sure that we have time to get on this one, even if it's at the expense to a degree of something else that we would typically be talking about. And if we feel, and this has happened in the past, because Kelly's right, it is a busy time of year. If we need to add a meeting to make them more palatable, I would rather add a meeting than beat ourselves up every other Thursday till 11 o'clock at night. Because obviously we see what happens is we keep looking at the clock saying, are we really going to get a chance to give this the consideration we clearly feel it deserves? I would rather think about adding a meeting, as we need to. So as the chair, we will make sure, and the superintendent, we'll make sure that we haven't cheated ourselves or anybody else out of the opportunity to do the work we want to do, the way we want to do it.
Yeah, because I like to hear the highlights, and then, then there's areas, particularly the things that principals have identified, and it will help, in terms of sort of matching up in terms of my own observations as I go through it.
Okay, thank you.
So in talking about the middle school, when I first found out about this information, I was a little bit nervous because the 8th grade takes 2 sessions of ELA MCAS, 2 sessions of math MCAS, 2 sessions of science MCAS, and then they were asked to answer 38 additional survey questions. So I was a little bit worried about that, but I was pleased to see that 109 of 112 students completed the survey, which was really great. So I was happy about that initially. In the areas of school climate, engagement, safety, and environment, Littleton Middle School's grade 8 was higher than the state across the board, with our highest sections being in school climate and in safety. I analyzed, in looking through the questions, 28 of the 38 questions that the students answered were at or above the state level in a positive way, so that's 74%. And I just want to highlight a few of those things that were specifically higher than the state average. Question 5, my parents feel respected when they participate at our school in parent-teacher conferences, open house, etc. That was 10 points higher than the state. Question 6, students from different backgrounds respect each other in our school, regardless of their race, culture, family, income, religion, sex, or sexual preference. That was 12 points higher than the state. Question 9, students respect one another, was 17 points higher than the state. Question 16, teachers support students who come to class upset, was 8 points higher than the state. 19, students at school try to stop bullying when they see it happening. That was 21 points higher than the state. 21, because I worry about my grades, it's hard for me to enjoy school. That was 14 points lower than the state, so that's seen in a positive light. And 23, in my school, groups of students tease or pick on one student. That was 9 points lower than the state average. And finally, question 32, students help each other learn without having to be asked by the teacher, was 9 points higher. Those things I attribute to, I must sound like a broken record, but every time I mention that we have team meetings together as a grade level team with the myself, the assistant principal, the school adjustment counselor, and the school psychologist. We have our weekly team meetings every Thursday and Friday. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of that, because as I said today as I was giving a tour to parents thinking about moving here from Honolulu, that the kids don't ever fall through the cracks at our school. We really try hard to make sure that we, on a weekly basis, are taking note of what's going on with our students and who needs help. And so long periods of time don't pass without our taking care of the needs of our kids at the middle school. We are following the SEL model from the book that everyone mentioned today, and I think that we are really starting to see, slowly but surely, a change in our culture at the middle school. We do continue to have advisory time and flex block time that's built into our day and our week to help students make connections with both their teachers and their classmates. And I, if I do say so, I feel like the teacher and administrator commitment to the students at the middle school is really excellent. There were 2 things that I noted sort of in negative light, and it was 8 and 11. Question number 8 says, I have choice in how I show my learning. For example, write a paper, prepare a presentation, make a video. That was 7 percentage points lower than the state average. And also question 11 was significant. In my classes, my teacher uses students' interests to plan class activities. That was 9 points lower. And in talking with teachers and with Jason, the assistant principal, about that, we really categorized that, both of those 2 questions, as engagement. Engagement is something we are really focused on this year. We've had several webinars with Kristen Pogue around engagement. And we're really trying to start to make those changes at the middle school. For example, our staff meeting format has changed this year, where at the beginning of each staff meeting, teachers are presenting, our leadership team and also other teachers have presented sort of mini lessons for the staff on different activities or things or concepts that they do within their classroom. And that really is starting to change the culture within our building. I think when you talk about changing a culture and increasing, in starting to model that engagement, it is something that we have to be aware that that takes time. It doesn't just, we don't give an example of it today and it happens tomorrow. But I think the more we talk about this, the more we are acknowledging at the middle school that slowly but surely these things are happening. So certainly I was pleased with the information. Certainly not all of it is where we want it to be, but in those two areas, it really gives us a focus to move forward. So I was pleased to have this information.
Joan.
Hello, everyone. As a leadership team at LHS, we took a look at the views of climate and learning vocal survey. 92 LHS sophomores took part in the survey. As Cheryl mentioned, it was after the MCAS test, and so we have to certainly account for that. There were probably about 115, 113, it ranged depending on whether it was English or math, sophomores who took MCAS, and of them, 92 completed the survey. So we have to acknowledge the very small sample size. If you look at it in terms of the school enrollment, it's probably about maybe 1/5 of the school, about 20% of the students, but all sophomores too. So it's grade specific too. So that's something as you take a deeper look at the data in the coming weeks to consider. In regard to these 92 student responses, LHS scored in the upper tier of students, upper tier of schools with typical school climates. I think Beth had mentioned that as a district we did as well, and all the schools were right about that area. And just shy, like middle school, we were just shy of schools with relatively strong school climate. And the results, of course, were related to student perceptions of engagement, safety, and environment. Those are the three major categories. Areas that we want to explore and take a closer look at as a school leadership team and faculty are, and this is actually in common with the middle school, promoting assignments based on student interest. That stuck out to us. We want that was something that students felt, was an area that they didn't have a lot of, that there wasn't a lot of assignments based on necessarily directly on student interest. Another thing we want to look at addressing is encouraging teachers to use student ideas to help students learn, to take into account student feedback. A lot of our teachers do model that for students in terms of reflecting on their practice and collecting feedback, doing surveys and things like that. Perhaps the sophomores haven't experienced that, but I do see a significant amount of that already happening. Teachers collecting feedback from students so they can inform their instruction. It's part and parcel of how we do things. And a lot of it was a big emphasis in the Marzano training that we took part in as a faculty, as a district this past year. Another area, correlates with survey data from not only YRBS, but also the focus groups that the superintendent conducted with the clinical staff and the survey data that was collected this past year. And I think there'll be an upcoming presentation about that. There is a concern about student stress related to grades. That was something that stood out to us. But we've seen that before. We certainly have anecdotal evidence of it, as well as survey and focus group data to corroborate that. There's something that was it was small percentage, but even though it was small, it was still a little bit of a concern. It seemed that some students reported the school avoidance due to feelings of safety. And what does that mean? As Scott pointed out, we have to tease that out. Are they talking about their own personal safety, or just their anxiety about things and how they approach things, but about the idea of coming to school? We know some students who are working with their families who have attendance issues, and often some of it's complicated because it's not just it's health related, but it's anxiety on top of it. Perhaps that's what it was in that class, but that's something we want to take a deeper dive into to make sure that we're addressing that concern. Even though it's small, even though we're above the state in just about every question in terms of a more positive result, we definitely, when our results are low but are close to the state, we want to take a closer look. Teachers asking students for feedback. That surprised me when I saw that, because I see so many teachers asking students for feedback in various forms. So we want to look a little closer at that. This one didn't necessarily surprise me because I've heard it from students, and it also, I think, comes up from time to time in other survey data. Students were questioning the relevance and importance of the learning. Some of the learning, the standards-based environment, a lot of it doesn't resonate with our students. We've been talking about that as a leadership team and certainly as an administrative team for the past year. how can we emphasize the relevance of the learning to students and make it more genuine, more authentic, I guess is the expression that's sometimes used, but certainly something that has real-life applications, that they can see the connection between what they're learning in their classroom to what they're doing in what they're experiencing in their life and what they're going to experience post-high school. Another area of attention that we want to explore is the level of pressure students feel to perform well. And that is connected, of course, to their concern around grades. We've seen that, we've heard about it anecdotally, certainly from parents and students, and various round tables that I've had over the last couple of years, coffees with parents. But we also have seen it just recently in the Student Stress and Climate Survey and the Student Stress and Climate focus groups that I mentioned earlier. So that's something we were not surprised by, and neither were the guidance counselors when they saw that. Areas of strength of note were the adult and student support for each other. Students, there's a solid connection there that seems to be abundant, and we're glad to see sophomores, in lower school or the lower grades reporting that. There's a largely respectful student body, especially open to inclusive relationships. Of course, there are some students who don't always honor that and do pick on each other. We have to acknowledge that it is a high school with adolescents who are still learning, in some ways, how to be appropriate socially and mature in professional environment. But we do see overall that largely students are respectful, and we get complimented about that all the time. At least our students do when we have visitors to the high school who come from various different communities. There's a strong sense of belonging at LHS. There was a strong a response that emphasized that teachers ensure safety in various forms. There's certainly a climate of high expectations at the high school, and that's been noted, of course, in the past. There's a strong access to help, or plenty of abundant access to help. Whether it's our tutoring center, we can emphasize that. I don't know exactly what students were necessarily emphasizing. Perhaps as they make up the after-school sessions that teachers provide, the directed studies. There's abundant opportunities for students to receive help, and that came through in the data. This was a nice thing to highlight. Students noted that students help each other, and that's something you don't always see in a high school, but I think a lot of it has to do with the instructional design that our teachers provide each day. I have the opportunity to walk throughout our classrooms each day and see lots of collaborative learning happening. Even the furniture arrangements are different now in the high school throughout, since especially in the last 10 years that I've seen a lot of changes where more and more peer-to-peer learning, more emphasis on teamwork. We adopted that as a core value about 8 years ago. And also, and perhaps lastly, I'll say that there's students feel supported by teachers and staff. That came through in the data, so that's certainly a positive. So as much as there's areas that we kind of were puzzled by and wanted, and certainly mildly concerned by, and we want to dig down to, there's a lot of areas of strength and a lot of points of pride for LHS. And overall, we want to make sure our goal would be there'll be more extensive reporting on this in an upcoming school committee meeting, but we're looking to consolidate the data from various surveys, the focus groups, the Ed School Climate Survey that was done at the high school a few years ago, the YRBS data, and another student survey that we conducted, as well as this vocal survey, and come up with a school climate and culture action plan for LHS that would be very tangible, things we could actually do. What are we going to do with regards to it? We're going to look at our schedule. There's all kinds of specifics that are being discussed. Some of the things that might be coordination of assessments that help reduce stress, looking at how we assign homework and grade homework. There's all kinds of academic tweaks we can make. One of the biggest things we've done this past year is the hiring. I appreciate the support of the school committee and the superintendent in bringing a therapeutic mental health counselor, who's already been incredibly impactful at the high school in just a few short months, making strong connections with kids who has incredible interpersonal skills and ability to develop rapport and trust. So that's been a really a big welcome. A welcome addition, but also a huge benefit to the high school students. And so I think you'll be hearing more specifics in the coming months, and certainly as we roll out our school improvement plan for the next year around what we'll do tangibly to address the concerns across a variety of survey instruments. We want to have a coordinated approach and something that's quite tangible and actionable that we're going to be getting. We're not just going to, we have piles of data now, and now we need to, enact some type of very clear response to it. But I am proud of the climate at the high school and our faculty and the work they do each day to create a positive and supportive environment for our students. And I think the data shows overall that students enjoy that environment. So, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Just, Kelly, there seems to be like 4 copies of this report in the packet, and intermixed with this North Public Middlesex sample 4 times. So is the data, it took me a while, that's why I was commenting earlier about the length of this presentation.
Duplicate?
Yeah.
It looks like it's in here 4 times, and it would be helpful maybe also for people that, the variation in the data is so, I couldn't find it.
So just to clarify, the district report, so there are 4 reports. The district report actually has all the school reports within it.
Right.
So there is repetition.
Yeah.
So that's,
It's confusing, particularly with it intermixed with so many samples of this North Middle School that is
Which
like.
is part of each report.
Right. But that was deliberate, not to mix you up, but it was deliberate so that you could see how to do the crosswalks.
Yeah,
and
I get
interpret.
the one sample, but when I ended up trying to understand why I had all of the data in the first report,
Right.
and then I had 3 more reports that basically was the same data without the other schools in it.
But the rubrics aren't the same. There are some differences.
Between elementary and...
Yeah, but that's on the summary page
Right.
too that tells me that.
So what would you like, Darrell?
Well, I just found it confusing in terms of, I waded through all of them to try to
I think the more
understand the
important
difference.
point is, I think we all need to know which one are we all going to look at and talk about.
Right.
We can talk about all of them,
Yeah.
or we can say, no, because it is confusing, let's focus on, the main, however we want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to answer that question right now.
And you need to know we're prepared to talk about any of them.
Right.
So it depends on what you want.
That's why I want more time to look at it, because it's a lot.
It is.
And it's new. That's the other thing. It's new to us. It's not like the MCAS we've been looking at for years. So your point is good, Darrell. Thank you. I think it'll help us all as we start plowing.
So we won't replicate this same presentation when we talk about it next week. Next week, you have electronic copies, so we'll spare you of excessive pages to look at.
Because based on the thing here, it looks like the first report, which has grade 5, all 3 areas, grade 10, grade 8, all 3 areas, and grade 10, all 3 areas. Looks like that one report there gives us, all of the information.
With the exception of the question-by-question breakdown.
No,
Yeah, it is. It does.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but for each grade?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed that.
What it doesn't give you is the positive responses combined percentages.
I flipped through the reports, I couldn't really see what the difference was
Yeah,
once I got
I
to
just
the.
picked up on it. It shows you the little green plus, which is the 2 positive responses combined. It gives you a percentage. So that is slightly more useful, but I haven't figured out if it's broken down the same way. So yeah.
Well, I mean, you can definitely focus on the first
Yeah.
5 or 6 pages, and then if you want to go to the other
Yeah,
pages, we can.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking that that's probably what we want to do, is let's both, but feel free to go where you want to go.
Right.
Just make sure that if you're going down to those other reports, get the context.
I guess.
Be prepared to set the context when you're bringing up your point so that we can all catch up.
Yeah, I guess, the more detailed analysis, I think, is more appropriate for the administration. I found that first report that's where I'm going to center my questions
Yeah,
on. I'm
me
really
too.
concerned about these 30 and 40% and the mostly truths, or when it comes to the safety issues. The sub-detail there, I'll key it up to you as what you're going to do about it, type of thing there. But anyway, but the subtle difference between those reports made it exceptionally difficult to understand why there were so many copies of it.
Well, then, when we discuss this at our next meeting, one of the questions I'm going to ask you when we have a lot of data is, in future years, what do you want? Right? Do you want the district summary? But right now, I don't think it would be appropriate to make that decision until you have a chance to go
for
through
sure.
the whole analysis. So certainly willing to shorten things if that's what you would like. And we've done that a number of times with certain data points.
Okay. All right. Well, it'll be a good conversation. Looking forward to it. I appreciate your indulgence with my request. Give us time to really get in there. All right, moving on to new business, a safety and security update.
You want to do the new stuff before my desk, please?
8:54. We should probably do the motions, Mike.
Okay, well, that's fine. So let's go to the budget subcommittee update. And what we want to do is, there are 3 articles in the town warrant regarding budget. There's the operating budget, which you guys voted on at the last meeting, but there's also a capital budget warrant article and a trust fund warrant article. We haven't typically voted on those, but the town administration asked us if we wanted to, and looking at it, there is funding relative to the school department on both those articles, so I think it would be appropriate for us. And that's how the warrant articles work, is they present the article, and then they typically present, if it's, depending on which boards it affects, those boards' votes are represented in the town meeting report to help town meeting members, give them context to how the boards feel about the different articles. So, given that, question, yep, Erica?
I'm just looking at this, and I might be wrong. For the capital plan, there were improvements to the Russell Street and Shaker Lane offices. Weren't those part of the capital?
They're part of that security line.
Okay, all right.
Right, yeah. And what's different this year, I think for the first time that I can ever remember, there was a revision after these items were prioritized. So kind of caught us a bit off guard. So it's nice to take a second look at this, because we had so many additions of what the requests were and what was approved. And now you know, in a succinct manner, you have 4 areas that were approved out of our request. So, and we did approve the larger list, so we've already done some due diligence, but it's nice to come back and see what the final approval is for various items.
All right.
So you're looking for a motion?
2 motions, one at a time.
I make a motion to approve the prioritized capital plan of technology Chromebook replacements, $135,000, school resource materials, $100,000, school security improvements, $34,500, and a high school telephone system replacement at $55,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
And the second one is to do what? That's to.
Yeah, do you have any questions about that? I sent you a slideshow, and I'm going to have Mrs. Ogden, if I can fit her in, actually talk about the portal. It's an exciting experience. We actually were able to partner with Andover. They're a portal site, so to speak, and what it really allows us to do is have the worldwide internet with checks and balances, so that our students and our community can talk to people in various countries. It's fascinating. It's growing quickly. It's expensive, but the experience is unbelievable. You're sitting in a pod, and it's just full of screens. It's painted black where there's mostly screens. The sound system is so real that you feel like they're sitting or standing right next to you. You could just shake their hand. It's just an incredible experience. And we're very fortunate to have the Kimball Foundation and other foundations, as you see listed here, sponsor that project. We want to build a critical mass, so to speak, and hopefully perpetuate this project, but it's going to take some continued capital, and we're hoping to find a corporate sponsor down the road. I think that's probably the only logical way to sustain this over a period of time.
And the reason we're discussing it is that this is being proposed to be funded through a grant. So it's got to go through the trust fund of the town. The town has to receive the grant, and we don't always have things in here, but we do this year on this particular article. So just the idea would be that, are we in support of accepting the money for this particular purpose?
So there's going to be a presentation, more details.
If we could fit it into the school, we could make it happen. Mrs. Ogden has been busy. We presented at a couple of trust foundations to secure some funding and the leadership table. So I'd love to have her come here. This is a real exciting project. We're so lucky to be able to have Handover embrace us as a partner.
Just one clarification. Are we making a motion to move the funds from these trust funds?
No, we're making a motion to support the article in the town meeting warrant, Article 13. And you can make it as simple as that. You know.
Well, that's what I'm trying to support.
Motion to support town warrant Article 13.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just trying to make myself a note here. All right. I make a motion that the school committee supports Article 13 in the annual town meeting to fund the Portal to the World project.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. Can you go ahead and communicate to Anthony and Solly that we did vote on those, and we'll get that in there? Awesome. Thank you. Let's stick with subcommittee reports. PMBC.
Let's see. Rich Crowley will be taking lead on getting a local contractor for the pole vault pit. We'll be having the contractor procure the box and install it, and then I think he should be coordinating with Steve to make sure that the account is appropriately funded for that there. There was some discussion. We approved a slight amendment to the work order for the engineering on the Shaker Lane lift. It's going to require a variance, and it's going to require a little bit more paperwork from the people to prepare the package for that. Other than that, everything else seems to be moving along.
All right, very good. Policy subcommittee? Oh, sorry.
There's one other thing, because it does affect Shaker Lane. We've also approved, and I think it's under auspices of the sewer subcommittee, to do a feasibility study of the current state of the Shaker Lane septic system, in particular whether it would, what its current state is and whether it would support the wastewater from the bathhouse.
Oh.
In terms of looking at options for that, but also recognizing that the Shaker Lane system is probably getting towards...
Everything in Shaker Lane is getting towards...
Yeah, the system's at least 25 years old.
Life expectancy.
Yeah.
We just need to keep that in context of...
So there may be some activities related to making sure they can find this septic, but also assessing its
Follow
condition.
your nose over there.
All right. Policy subcommittee? Okay. All right. Let's circle back up to the safety and security update.
Yep. So there's a list in the packet of some of the projects that we've done, but I just wanted to give a quick update. The Safety and Security Council meets every 2 months. It's comprised of the administrative team the principals, the assistant principals when they're available, the superintendent, myself, and it's also made up, the police chief and our resource officer are part of that committee, and so is our fire chief as well, and
Eric.
those personnel, and as representative of school committee Erica as well. So we meet every 2 months. We plan additional meetings as needed, and there's certainly some work that goes on outside of those meetings as far as reviewing documents that the administrative team does. A lot of the principals have worked a lot outside of those meetings to work on some documents as well. So some of the updates we've done this year, so we continue to work and review on safety, security procedures and policies. We're reviewing our evacuation procedures for multiple scenarios, and those documents and procedures continue to be updated and as revised as needed, working with our emergency personnel in town. We're upgrading our card access system so that all 4 buildings will be on the same card access system. Right now they're on really 3 different systems, and they're controlled at each school, and we're going to consolidate those into one location so we can control all the buildings from one location. So that'll work will begin over April vacation. Alice drills and Alice training. Shaker Lane and Russell Street have recently completed Alice trainings. That was done on April 2nd and March 27th, respectively. The middle school Alice drills are scheduled for April 30th. The high school Alice drills are scheduled for April 30th, and the middle school and high school are working to coordinate that with our emergency personnel as well. And the high school will also conduct AED and CPR training for the high school seniors in April, and the staff was trained in December, so they're making progress in that areas as well. We're also, the work will begin as well over April vacation. We're installing additional security cameras as requested by our high school administrative staff and our resource officer to cover some additional areas. We're also installing an additional camera at Russell Street School to help monitor the playground a little bit better. That was at the request of the Russell Street staff. And we're also, and as part of the safety and security funding that we just voted on, reviewing hardware to increase and enhance both cell phone coverage and handheld radio communication within our buildings. There are some areas that you get very little signal or no signal, so we're going to look on enhancing those systems as well. So that's a quick highlight of some of the things we've done. We continue to work on, again, procedures and policies, and continue to review facility issues, and if there's enhancements we need to make, we go ahead and do those. Glad to answer any questions. Questions?
Just wanted to clarify one thing. In the agenda, it says we are upgrading this card access system, so they will not be on the same system, but you
No,
said they will be.
so right now they're on. We have
There's
3
a
different
typo.
systems.
Yeah.
Typo. There's a
Okay.
typo.
Oh.
So-
It should say
so
will
they
now.
will
Okay.
be
Yeah,
now.
sorry. They
That
will
makes
be on the
sense.
system, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nice catch.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep,
Okay.
sorry, I missed that.
I knew you knew what you were talking about, but I just,
Could go backwards.
yeah.
Yeah, and that'd be a big improvement, because right now, if we want to make changes, we have to go to the schools, each individual school, and make changes, and this will make it better and safer, and we can control it better.
And easier to monitor.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, any,
Thank you.
anything else on that?
Just so you're aware, next meeting, we're going to do the superintendent evaluation. So I'll be sending materials out, hopefully at the end of next week or the Monday, as soon as I get some time to write the summary. You'll be getting a lot of materials, like you always do, but I would appreciate it if you take a look at the 10 elements that you're evaluating me on, and look at the rubric so you get a context of what those elements actually mean. It's all, that whole process is so tied into to each component. And the rubric gives you feeds or descriptors of what the element actually is and how it pertains to the superintendent's role. It was very, very helpful. So I know when I send you all this material, it's pretty hard to tease out what's important and what's exhilarating. But it's all important in my eyes.
All right, very good, thank you. Anything else? I will ask for any input from interested citizens. here. All right, just want to make sure we went through the whole agenda. All right, anything else? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all.